Most people believe wealth is built through big moments, big promotions, big investments, big breakthroughs, big risks. And because of this belief, most people spend their financial lives waiting until they earn more, waiting until they feel ready, waiting until they understand investing perfectly, waiting until they have enough money to start. But here's the truth that quietly separates people who build wealth from people who stay financially stuck. Wealth is almost never built through big financial decisions. It is built through tiny money habits repeated so consistently they become invisible. The problem is, small financial habits do not feel powerful when they begin. They feel insignificant. Saving $5 feels meaningless. Investing small amounts feels slow. Tracking spending feels tedious. Avoiding small impulse purchases feels unnecessary. And because the emotional reward feels small, most people abandon these habits before they have time to compound. But your brain is not designed to recognize slow growth. It is designed to notice immediate change, and wealth grows in ways the brain struggles to emotionally detect. Let's start with something psychologists call the accumulation effect. The accumulation effect describes how small actions repeated consistently create results that feel disproportionate to the effort. In finance, this effect is powered by compounding. Compounding is often explained mathematically, but compounding is also psychological. Because compounding does not just grow money, it grows behavior, it grows confidence, it grows identity, and identity is one of the strongest forces behind long-term financial success. Let's imagine two people. Person A makes one large financial decision each year. Person B builds 5 tiny money habits that require almost no effort. Tracking daily spending, automatically saving small percentages, reviewing finances once a week, avoiding small unnecessary purchases, increasing investments slightly every few months. At first, Person A feels more financially ambitious. Person B feels slow, but over time something subtle begins to happen. Tiny habits reduce financial friction. Financial friction is the invisible resistance that makes managing money feel stressful. When friction decreases, consistency increases. And consistency is the true engine of wealth building. Now let's talk about the psychology of tiny habits. The brain resists large behavioral changes. Large changes feel risky. Large changes feel overwhelming. Large changes trigger emotional fear. Tiny habits bypass resistance because they feel safe. Saving $5 does not feel threatening. Checking your account for 30 seconds does not feel stressful. Moving small amounts into investments does not feel dangerous. Because the behavior feels emotionally safe, the brain allows repetition. And repetition is how habits form. Once habits form, behavior becomes automatic. And automatic behavior is dramatically more powerful than forced discipline. Now let's talk about something most people completely overlook. Tiny money habits do something bigger than building savings. They build financial awareness. Awareness is one of the strongest predictors of financial stability. People who are aware of their money consistently make better financial decisions, even if they never study complex financial strategies, because awareness reduces surprise. And surprise is one of the biggest drivers of financial stress. Tiny habits like tracking spending or reviewing balances create continuous awareness. Continuous awareness creates emotional calm, and emotional calm leads to better decision-making. Now, here is where things become fascinating. Tiny habits rewire how your brain experiences money emotionally. Most people experience money as unpredictable. Unpredictability creates anxiety. Anxiety creates avoidance. Avoidance creates instability. But tiny habits create predictable financial interaction. Predictability reduces anxiety, and reduced anxiety makes people more willing to engage with their finances, which creates positive feedback loops. Let's talk about feedback loops. A feedback loop is when a behavior produces results that reinforce the behavior itself. Saving small amounts produces visible growth. Visible growth produces motivation. Motivation increases saving behavior. Over time, the habit strengthens itself. Now let's talk about identity transformation. Most people attempt financial change by changing behavior first, but lasting change happens when identity changes. Tiny money habits provide daily evidence of financial responsibility. Each small action sends a message to your brain. I am someone who manages money intentionally, and identity shapes future behavior strongly. Once someone sees themselves as financially responsible, saving feels natural instead of forced. Now let's talk about emotional momentum. Momentum is one of the most underrated forces in financial psychology. When behavior is inconsistent, every financial decision feels difficult. When behavior becomes consistent, decisions feel easier. Tiny habits create emotional momentum. Momentum reduces decision fatigue, and reduced decision fatigue increases consistency automatically. Now let's talk about loss prevention. Many people believe wealth is built only through growth, but wealth is equally built through quiet loss prevention, avoiding unnecessary fees, preventing impulse purchases, reducing interest payments, preventing lifestyle inflation. Tiny habits catch small financial leaks before they grow, and preventing small leaks often produces greater long-term results than chasing large gains. Now let's talk about compounding confidence. Confidence is rarely discussed in financial education, but confidence determines financial risk tolerance, investment behavior, and long-term consistency. Tiny habits create reliable success experiences. Reliable success builds confidence, and confident individuals are more likely to invest consistently, pursue income growth, and maintain financial plans. Now let's talk about emotional safety. Large financial decisions often trigger fear of failure. Tiny habits create low-risk environments. Low-risk environments encourage experimentation and learning. Learning improves financial skill, and financial skill increases long-term wealth potential. Now here is something incredibly powerful. Tiny habits reduce emotional volatility. Financial stress often comes from sudden large decisions. Should I invest this large amount? Should I cut my spending drastically? Should I change my entire budget? Tiny habits replace large decisions with small routine actions. Routine actions feel stable. Stability reduces stress. Reduced stress improves long-term financial engagement. Now let's talk about behavioral inertia. Behavioral inertia means once behavior starts moving in a direction, it tends to continue moving in that direction. Tiny positive habits create positive inertia, and inertia is extremely difficult to stop once established. People often underestimate how powerful momentum becomes after months or years of repetition. Now let's talk about time perception. The brain struggles to emotionally understand long-term timelines. Saving for retirement feels abstract. Investing for decades feels distant. Tiny habits shrink time perception. Instead of focusing on distant outcomes, tiny habits focus on daily action, and daily action feels emotionally manageable. Now let's talk about automation. Automation transforms tiny habits into permanent financial infrastructure. Automatic transfers, automatic investment contributions, automatic bill payments. Automation ensures consistency even during emotional or stressful periods, and emotional stability is not required for automated progress. Now, here is something deeply psychological. Tiny habits reduce shame. People who struggle financially often avoid money because they feel overwhelmed or embarrassed. Large financial plans feel intimidating. Tiny actions feel approachable. Approachable actions reduce avoidance. Reduced avoidance increases engagement, and engagement is required for long-term financial improvement. Now, let's talk about attention. Where attention goes, behavior follows. Tiny money habits keep money within daily awareness without creating stress. This keeps financial decisions intentional rather than reactive. Now here is one of the most powerful truths about wealth building. Wealth is rarely built through intensity. It is built through reliability. Intensity produces short bursts of progress. Reliability produces lifetime stability. Tiny habits create reliability, and reliability creates compounding results. Now let's talk about delayed breakthroughs. Tiny habits often feel invisible for long periods, then suddenly results accelerate. Investment growth becomes noticeable. Savings milestones arrive faster. Financial stress decreases dramatically. This moment feels like a breakthrough. But the breakthrough was quietly built by thousands of invisible small actions. Now here is the final psychological shift that changes everything. Stop asking, what big financial move should I make? Start asking, what tiny money behavior can I repeat forever? Because forever is where wealth is built. Not in dramatic decisions, not in temporary motivation, but in small behaviors repeated so consistently they become identity. And once financial stability becomes identity, wealth stops feeling like something you chase. It becomes something that naturally grows around your daily life. There is another quiet transformation that tiny money habits create, and it happens long before wealth appears on paper. Tiny money habits change how you experience control. Most people do not struggle with money because they lack intelligence. They struggle because money feels unpredictable. Income changes. Expenses appear suddenly. Bills stack unexpectedly. Emergencies arrive without warning. And unpredictability creates emotional chaos. When money feels chaotic, the brain reacts emotionally instead of strategically. It either panics or avoids the problem entirely. Tiny habits slowly remove chaos from your financial life. Checking your finances daily or weekly may seem small, but psychologically it transforms money from something mysterious into something familiar. Familiar things feel safer. Safe things are easier to manage. And when money feels safe to look at, people naturally begin making better decisions. Avoidance decreases. Awareness increases. Control begins to grow. Now here is something extremely important. Tiny habits do not just create financial awareness. They create financial memory. Financial memory is the brain's ability to recognize spending patterns, income cycles, and behavioral triggers automatically. People with strong financial memory start noticing patterns without effort. They recognize when spending is rising, they notice emotional triggers, they predict upcoming expenses naturally. And once the brain begins predicting money patterns, financial decisions become proactive instead of reactive. Reactive financial behavior creates instability. Proactive financial behavior creates stability, and stability is one of the strongest emotional foundations for wealth building. Now let's talk about emotional desensitization. Many people feel anxiety when looking at bank accounts, debt balances, or financial plans. That anxiety creates avoidance. Avoidance increases financial confusion, and confusion increases anxiety. This creates a loop that keeps people disconnected from their finances. Tiny money habits slowly desensitize this fear. Looking at numbers regularly reduces emotional intensity. The brain learns that interacting with money is not dangerous, and when emotional fear decreases, logical thinking increases. Now let's talk about decision simplification. Every financial decision requires mental energy. Should I buy this? Can I afford this? Should I save this amount? Should I invest now or later? When financial systems are unclear, every decision feels complicated. Tiny habits simplify decision-making by creating consistent rules. For example, automatically saving a small percentage of income removes the need to decide how much to save each time. Setting spending boundaries removes the need to analyze every purchase emotionally. Decision simplification reduces mental fatigue, and when mental fatigue decreases, financial consistency increases. Now let's talk about emotional attachment to progress. The brain is naturally motivated by visible growth. Tiny money habits create frequent progress signals. Each small deposit, each avoided expense, each milestone reached. These signals create emotional attachment to financial growth, and emotional attachment increases long-term commitment. People stay consistent with behaviors that feel meaningful emotionally. Now let's talk about stress reduction through predictability. Stress is one of the largest destroyers of financial consistency. Stress pushes the brain toward quick relief instead of long-term planning. Tiny habits create predictable routines. Predictable routines reduce uncertainty. Reduced uncertainty lowers stress. Lower stress improves decision quality. This creates a powerful cycle where stability reinforces itself. Now here is a hidden transformation most people never notice. Tiny habits increase self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief that you are capable of influencing outcomes in your life. When people repeatedly complete small financial actions successfully, their brain begins to trust their ability to manage money. And self-trust changes behavior dramatically. People who trust themselves financially are more willing to invest, plan, and take calculated risks. Now let's talk about the psychological safety of incremental change. Large financial changes often trigger fear because they feel irreversible. Tiny changes feel reversible. Reversible behavior feels safe. Safe behavior allows experimentation. Experimentation leads to learning. Learning builds financial intelligence naturally over time. Now let's talk about emotional resilience. Financial setbacks are unavoidable. Unexpected expenses happen. Investments fluctuate. Income shifts. People without stable habits often panic during setbacks. They abandon financial plans completely. Tiny habits create emotional resilience because they create routine stability even during financial turbulence. Routine stability provides psychological grounding. Grounded individuals recover from setbacks faster and maintain long-term consistency. Now let's talk about identity layering. Identity rarely changes instantly. It evolves through repeated evidence. Each small financial habit adds evidence of responsibility. Evidence accumulates until identity shifts naturally. An identity-driven behavior requires less effort than discipline-driven behavior. Now here is another fascinating transformation. Tiny habits increase financial optimism. Not unrealistic optimism, predictive optimism. People begin to expect progress because they repeatedly experience it, and expectation of progress increases motivation. Now let's talk about micro-discipline. Tiny habits still require discipline at the beginning, but micro-discipline is far easier to sustain than macro-discipline. Saving $5 requires less emotional resistance than saving $500. Checking your account for 30 seconds requires less effort than building a complex financial plan. Micro-discipline gradually builds behavioral strength. Over time, small actions expand naturally into larger actions. Now let's talk about opportunity readiness. Wealth often grows through unexpected opportunities, investment chances, career opportunities, business ideas, market changes. People without stable financial habits often cannot take advantage of opportunities because their finances are fragile. Tiny habits create financial flexibility. Flexibility allows rapid response to opportunity. And opportunity response is one of the biggest accelerators of wealth growth. Now let's talk about long-term trust with money. Many people view money as stressful or unreliable. Tiny habits create positive emotional interactions with money daily, and repeated positive interactions rebuild trust. When people trust money, they engage with it more often, and engagement improves financial outcomes. Now let's talk about psychological compounding. Financial compounding grows money. Psychological compounding grows behavior, confidence, and identity simultaneously. The longer tiny habits continue, the stronger psychological reinforcement becomes. Eventually, behavior becomes automatic, confidence becomes stable, and identity becomes aligned with wealth building. Now here is the moment most people never recognize. Tiny habits create a silent tipping point. For months or years, progress feels slow. Then suddenly, financial growth accelerates. Savings milestones appear faster. Investment growth becomes visible. Financial stress begins disappearing. And people believe the change happens suddenly. But it never happens suddenly. It happens through thousands of small invisible decisions that built a stable foundation. Now, here is the ultimate shift in perspective. Financial success is not built by changing your life dramatically. It is built by changing your daily interaction with money, because daily interaction determines long-term outcomes, and tiny habits transform daily interaction in ways that feel manageable, sustainable, and emotionally safe. Now imagine this. Instead of chasing motivation, instead of waiting for the perfect financial moment, Instead of trying to overhaul your entire financial life, you simply build tiny systems that move money quietly in the right direction every single day. And those tiny movements, repeated over years, become something almost magical. Not because they are dramatic, because they are reliable. And reliability is the true architecture of wealth. Wealth is not built loudly, it is built quietly. Through habits so small, they rarely feel important in the moment, but powerful enough to shape entire financial futures.